I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 10 to the Sky. Today, jumping back into some more All the Mods 10 to the Sky, we are going to dabble a little bit into, well, actually additions. Now, I know the All the Mods star only requires a couple of items from this, but I think I want to use this as an experiment to automate this process. From actual additions. I haven't actually done this in a long time, and I haven't tried automating this setup in a really long time either. So it is going to be kind of fun to do this, and I think we can handle it with modular routers and many other things. We may even experiment today with some new tools. But now here's what we need to make. We need to make empowered canola seeds. So this is going to require a few different steps. We need the actually additions in power to be able to do this. And we're also going to need to use the atomic reconstructor. And so today we need to automate the atomic reconstructor, and we also need to automate the empowerer. So now I hope you're strapped in and ready to go, because we are about to get all of these things automated and very efficiently. Now, just to mention, all of this stuff that we're working on is to complete the All the Mods star progression, which is something that I really want to get done. And so each of these little bits that we're doing are going to ultimately lead up to it. But you could use these in any world you're working on, not just specifically this pack. Now, since we're going to be playing around with a little bit of actually additions today, I should say a lot of actually additions today, what is your favorite, and I mean your favorite, feature of actually additions? I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Now, as far as the space required for this, it's not going to be too bad. The atomic reconstructor really is just a singular block. I mean, it looks like this. Items essentially can be dropped onto it and can be collected, and then it does a little laser beam like this. Now, by default, it's set to deactivation mode, which is just going to constantly pulse, but we can use a redstone torch to put it into pulse mode. This is the mode that I like to have it in, so that way we can use something like a pressure plate, for example, and we can just drop the items onto the pressure plate to then convert them. And this we can use to our advantage for automation purposes. So, for example, I could place the atomic reconstructor facing up, for example, and then a pressure plate on top. And let's just assume that we have like a pattern provider that goes a few blocks up on top of this. Let's say about here, like we can do directly on top of this, we have a pattern provider, and then that pattern provider sends items into like a barrel. Let's just say we use a barrel for like an item buffer, right? So it sends items into the barrel, and then we need to drop the items onto here, and then we need to get the items back into our pattern provider. So we can use something like an advanced item collector. This is a pretty decent way of doing this. So that way we have a filter inside of here to make sure we prevent certain things from showing up. And then we can squeeze this down until we get a nice compact size, bring the Y value up until it fits within the bounding boxes here. And then that should be completely fine, right? We have the ability to whitelist and say, hey, I only want to be able to pick up certain items. And we need to make sure that we send it back into the same pattern provider that we created the recipes from, so that way it will complete it whenever we have this put into lock crafting mode. So yes, we only want to send in certain batches because of the pressure plate. If we start dropping a bunch of items onto this pressure plate, the pressure plate is just going to stay in its on position and it will never flash again. So to be able to automate this, we are going to need the pressure plate to at least come back up. This can be a little bit of a challenge because we need some way to drop the items on here. And I think the world interaction is going to be a pretty decent way of doing this, but we may have to tweak this to kind of get this to work. So from industrial foregoing, the world interaction, which we have used before, is what I'm going to need to get set up. So world transporter, not world interaction. But yes, same thing. We need this to drop items into the world. So if something gets thrown, it goes right into this. But we already noticed some problems, right? It's not dropping stacks at a time or anything like that. So I think we can put in specific upgrades that drop the entire stack. So that right there dropped the entire stack that was in here, which is what we want. And that, by the way, is the efficiency upgrade. And so we don't need it to be fast. We just need it to essentially drop the entire stack. And so the automation is almost ready to go. We need to go to actually additions, and we need to look at all the things that can be converted via this atomic reconstructor. As of right now, just simply doing Redstonia is probably going to be one of the starters. And what I'm going to say here is I'm probably going to set it to 32 each. We probably could do 64. I'm going to set these all to 32 just to make sure that it has enough power to be able to do all of the crafts. So it's going to do a batch of 32. It's going to drop it, and it's expecting to get these back. So let's drop this in, and let's just make sure our magnet's off for right now. And let's give this a shot and see if this works. Now, inside of here, I do need to drag the redstonia. Oh, that's right. We can't do the filter yet until we actually have some. I'm pretty sure I do have some redstonia, though. Actually additions. Yes, we do actually have redstonia. Perfect. So I'm going to put that in the filter. And so now, whenever it gets completed, it should get automatically sucked back in. And then over here, we have this set to locked crafting mode. So now let's craft some. Should do a set of 32. Instantly got crafted and then sent back. But what if we craft 100? Okay, so this is where I have a little bit of a problem. It never gave it time to reset the pressure plate. And so we have another problem happening now. And I think I have a solution to this. It is going to involve the advanced sensor from Just Dire Things, and I've removed the pressure plate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this up so it's detecting this block position, and we want to make it look for items, so target items specifically. And what it should do is it should send a redstone pulse to this whenever it detects that there is an item there. And so that should cause this reconstructor to then trigger. Now we do have to give this some power in order to work. And just to sort of test this out, let's drop that in there. And you notice it did work. And it is sending the pulse. It is detecting, and there's even a delay here that we can increase to make sure that it does give it enough delay to be able to trigger another pulse. But I mean, that's exactly what we want to see right there. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and reset everything, and then let's try the redstonia again. Perfect. So we just go to actual additions. Let's try to request 100 of those. Hit sent. It should do another pulse, but it definitely did not. So what we can do is increase this to like 60 ticks and try again. So we'll drop those back in there. Okay, and it's happening so fast that this never has a chance to stop pulsing. Now I bet if we set this to a pulse mode, is there even the ability to do that? I don't think there is. Aha, I think I have found a solution to this, which is kind of interesting, by the way. So what I can do is I could set this to be less than 1 and then have it send out a strong signal. It shouldn't matter either way. And so it sends out a constant redstone signal because of this. What we can do with that is we can trigger a pulse timer. So the pulse timer actually stays off while it is receiving a redstone signal. And then whenever it detects a signal, any item greater than 1, like if we split that, it will then trigger this and will continue to pulse over and over again until it no longer detects that there's an item there. And we can be very specific with this. We can say like every 5 ticks, make sure to check if there's an item here. And this, I believe, should solve our problem. So let's go to actually additions. This seems like a really wild thing to test. But yes, that is so much faster. And we can use like the pulse timer from Create on its default settings, by the way. So yeah, just be sure to map this out. It's very, very simple. Less than is just looking for this block space. That's basically it. This is pretty much automated, and we can set now any recipe we want for this. And so we'll do things like the palace block. I know this is nostalgia, but Diamond Teen, man, every time I play with actual editions, it's just, it sets a nostalgia because this was a mod that I played with early on when I first started playing with modded Minecraft. And just every time I see it now being constantly updated, it makes me happy. Then we have the void crystals. By the way, I'm middle mouse clicking on this to set its value. That's actually how I'm doing it, but it tells you right here when you hover over it, middle mouse click to modify the values. And then how can I forget Nori? Yes. Now with all of those patterns in, and then we also have them all inside of our advanced item collector, this process is now super simple, just dropping the things on there, and we can request this, and it can be done on demand. Now, some reasons for crafting all of this stuff up and getting this stuff automated. is because I want to make a player interface. And 18 of these, I mean, it's going to get kind of a pain. You need all of these ender cases, which needs all of this in powered diamantine. And powered diamantine requires you to do this in powered craft. And just bulk crafting this can be kind of tedious. That's why I kind of want to go about automating it. Also, if you don't know me already, I really like to automate things. So with all of the base sort of conversion things done, we now need to look at the conversion things in their empowered state. And how do we get this started? Well, we're going to need the empowerer. So the empowerer, it's really hard for me to say that for some reason, is 5 different components technically. So it's going to require 4 separate display stands and then 1 empower, which means you do need 5 display stands in order to make this thing. But yes, we are going to need all of these batteries and so on and so forth, which does require all of these base components. And we're about to see this whole crafting thing that we just set up with the empower really kick off here. Oh, and this is actually a pretty good one too. Aesthetic quartz is also done via this method. So we need chiseled quartz specifically, which I guess we could use. Yeah, we can use a smithing recipe here to make the chiseled quartz and just drop that in. And then what's the other one that's needed? So just regular quartz. Okay. And so, yeah, for this too, we'll also just do like 32 and then we'll get 32 back. But this is another one of those things that gets done in the empower. And I think this is about it for the empower. However, there are several things that can be automated with the empower because it kind of has a conversion. So yes, you can take certain things, I think like soul sand, and turn it directly into quartz and things like that. And they even added compress conversions. Oh my goodness. Yes, red mushrooms can be turned into wart. This is how you make some of the laser lenses. And by the way, if this filter does get completely filled, we can just add another item collector on the side or on the side over here too to expand our filter list. So now the fun is going to begin. I have all of those patterns ready to go. We are going to need technically 5 display stands. So I'm going to do 5 of those and all of that crafted up pretty quickly because I do have some in stock. And then we craft that, which finished. I technically had all of them in stock already. Oh boy. That's okay. We're going to see this thing rip into action very, very soon. Now that we have this altar, I do want to line this up right about here, I think is where I want it to go. And let's actually set up the empower. So the empower is the thing that goes in the middle, but believe it or not, it doesn't actually receive power. What receives power are the display stands. They go 2 blocks out. And so 1, 2, and on the 3rd block from the actual stand is where these go. So leave a 2 block space. And this right here is the empower basically set up. Now we just need to give these power and then, well, we need to get items to them. So now we need to kind of understand how the empower actually works so we can automate it. So by default, these store 1 item. So they can hold 1 item to display, which is pretty nice. And it has a really nice display, even if you wanted to use this for decoration purposes. But what doesn't hold an item immediately is the empowerer. This is kind of a problem because if we build a pattern, we need to make sure that this is the last thing that gets placed in. So all of our outside items need to be built in our pattern. They need to be done first. And then this needs to be the final thing that then gets clicked onto all of this, this setup. So how do we do that? Well, defining the pattern is pretty easy with applied energistics. So if we have a pattern and we have a barrel, it's going to take something like a it's going to take something like a pattern from actually additions. And let's say we do empowered redstonia crystal, for example. It's going to say, hey, I need all of these items here. When we build the pattern, notice it took the redstonia crystal and put it first. This is actually not the correct way to build this pattern. So the way this will work is it's going to send items from left to right and then send items from left to right going down to the next line. And it continues this indefinitely. And that's how it's actually going to send to a barrel. And what I need to do is I need to make sure that the thing that goes in the middle is the last thing in the pattern. You don't have to move items around. You can just simply add it and make sure it's the last thing. So if we set this up and we put this pattern in, and let's say I now request from actually additions, I request this empowered. What you're going to see is the pattern provider sent these out in a very specific order. They send it out in the same order that we just seen it in there. And so how do we actually get it over to here? Well, we can use a modular router, and the modular router is going to be very helpful for this. we're going to pull in items one at a time, which is also going to pull from left to right into its buffer slot. And then we're going to distribute that into all of these slots. So that is going to be our first task. So now first things first, we need to put the puller module in, make sure that's pulling from the up. It's going to pull the first item from the barrel in, and it works its way, like I said, from left to right, going from the first line, then moving down left to right, the second line, and so on and so forth. So that will make sure to pull the items into the buffer. Now our distributor module, this needs to be transferring out of the router. We don't have to worry about anything else. We can even leave it in round robin mode. And then we just simply click on here to tell it, hey, where to send to. And then we need to make sure this is one of the other targets, because we're going to be working from one single modular router for this. So as soon as I do that, this should kick on and everything should get placed in. We're going to notice that gets sent, and then that gets sent. And then last but not least, this gets sent, which actually starts the whole process up. Now, we do have to give these power, and I actually like to give them power underneath, so they're nice and kind of nice and looking. That way we don't have to worry about cables being everywhere and exposed. But we can just simply use some gates. Like I said, the middle one doesn't actually receive any power, so we don't have to worry about anything there. But as soon as I place this last one on, that is when the craft is going to start, and it has now finished. So now what we need to do is we need to tell our modular router to pull this item out and send it back into this same pattern provider that this was originally sent from. Now for this, we could use a secondary modular router, but I think we can actually get away with just using one so long as we set all of our patterns correctly. Now I'm going to have to test this, but will it be able to pull from the top here if I add this in? It does. Okay, so we don't have to do anything fancy here. But notice, by the way, it did pull it back out and then start to redistribute again. We don't want that. The modular router actually works from left to right. So what it should technically do is it should do the next thing in the process, which is going to be our sender module, which will then send back into the pattern provider. So to do this, we'll just click here, and then we'll put that inside of there. And now when I put this in, it's going to immediately send back out, but it shouldn't. And I want to see if we even need to filter this, because I think this sort of acts like a hopper where anything that gets pulled out of it isn't the insert thing. So I guess we'll have to do another request here. Let's go ahead and cancel this operation, and then we will request another one. And that is just going to make this whole thing jump into action again. So there we go. We'll do another test craft. And yes, we see that the modular router is not pulling it out, but it just pulled it out and it just sent it back in. That's exactly what we want. No filtering even required. Oh, it's so nice, so modular. You can't beat it. Now, the only final step that we have to worry about is making sure this, yet again, is set to lock until primary crafting result is returned. And that's why we use the modular router to send the item back into the same pattern provider that sent it out. And that's so that way it will unlock the pattern provider to send a new batch in. And this right here is ready to set up patterns for. Or is it? See, while I was testing a few things, I actually stumbled upon a major issue. Well, and that's because I didn't actually realize that something like these Redstonia crystals can actually go into the Empower before anything else goes in. So what this means is our patterns can actually be defined a lot easier. So speaking of patterns, I've already made a few of them up outside of the Redstonia. And if I put this inside of here, you'll notice all I have to do now is just simply click this, and whatever the default is going to work, because we need this to kind of go in first. The other method does work, but some things do break the method. For example, sometimes with it being in round robin mode, it will skip this and place the Redstonia in this position, which is something that I completely overlooked. So how do we fix this? Well, what we're going to need to do is just add a sender module and then remove the empowerer from the distributor module. So the sender needs to just be linked here. And just like I mentioned before, this runs from left to right. So when an item goes in the buffer, it runs a check on it and runs from left to right, new item, left to right. So this should be the first thing that it checks. Now, something else that you want to do is you also want to put a regulator augment in here and make sure it's limited to 1. So that way, if something like 2 snowballs is required or 2 clay is required, it will distribute them, because I did find that it was also breaking in that. Sometimes it was trying to send 2 snowballs into this display stand. For some reason, it actually lets it do it, even though we can't do it from clicking. So that kind of fixes that. And so now we can build our patterns normally. So yeah, it sends to this correctly, which makes making the patterns a whole lot easier, because we can just use JEI and whatever it defines, which works out perfect, by the way. And so with that, we have something like empowered canola seeds, right? That we can craft. And this is very, very quick for us to craft now. I mean, just look at that. That is so fast. And these are actually needed for the All the Mods star. We need 18 of these, and I've already crafted several of them up whenever I was doing the testing of all of this. And now we've got this ready to go. But we still have another craft to do, and that is these players interfaces, and we need 18 of those. By the way, this needs to craft 300. 300! Almost 400 of these. This is going to be a very long craft. I'm actually going to cancel this for right now, because I actually want to work on some stuff before we do this, because this is going to be something I just let run in the background. And the first things first is I want to show off some things from Actually Editions. Speaking of showing off things, this thing that's in my hand is definitely worth showing off. This is the firework box. You just make it with a single firework, just a regular piece of paper and gunpowder. And then what we can do is we can put it into pulse mode with a redstone torch. And then we can put like a gate on it. Like just throw a simple gate on the side to give it some power, right? And it's going to start doing its thing, shooting fireworks, but we can use a pulse timer on this thing to really make it rip. Look at this. Oh my goodness. Yes. And where would this be good? Well, how about trolling your friends? Yeah. I mean, have a blast. But now in all seriousness, there are some really, really useful things that belong in Actually Editions. Like, for example, phantom faces, which are pretty darn cool and allow you to access blocks while not actually being at the block's position. Now, to get this to work, you are going to need a phantom connector. And this is something you can just simply make here, a phantom connector. This is kind of like the wrench for phantom blocks. And then we need a phantom interface. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and pull this, and that's a phantom item face. There are a bunch of different ones. Phantom placers, phantom liquid face, phantom energy face. They all do different things, even a phantom breaker. Now, the phantom item face, I think, would be best shown off by using a barrel and a hopper. And let's just say, for example, that you have a barrel right here and you need to send items to this, but it's completely surrounded by a bunch of things, or you're piping into it from all sides and you need access to the other sides. Well, you can do this right here. It has a range of 16 blocks by default, and we should be able to shift right click. It says block stored to the connectors. So we have this location bound, and then we should be able to shift right click on this to set the actual block. So now this block is linked to this block. And so we can, of course, send items into it from here, but we can also send items into it from here. So if I, for example, drop this in, notice there's nothing in here, and I drop this barrel in, well, that barrel is now inside of this barrel. And yes, this is an entangled block of sorts. Problem is yeah, it's limited to a range of 15, but honestly, that's pretty decent. But now there's a lot of different things, like for example, this phantom breaker that quite literally breaks the block within 3 blocks of it. So if I wanted to change its position and I want it to break this block, it can break blocks within 3 blocks of it. Like, that's so cool. Now, some other things that make this mod really worthwhile is definitely the coffee maker. Yes, we are going to need ourselves a coffee maker here. And for more than just one reason, actually, believe it or not, you can actually get a villager from Actually Editions to work. So it just is going to need a coffee maker. And we are going to need a chicken. So let's go ahead and get ourselves a chicken, and we can just polymorph one of the chickens directly into a villager. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to work out perfect, right? So we'll throw that there. Perfect. We have a villager that turned into an engineer, and yes, we can buy all kinds of stuff like emeralds. We can use this. I mean, wouldn't you know it? Who lives off of coffee? Yeah, an engineer. And me. Definitely me. After leveling this guy up, I mean, he gives us extreme energy lasers, which are pretty nice, by the way. Also, some wooden casings. But yes, I want to fill this up with some water here. And then we just drop in some coffee and we let the coffee build up. I do have some coffee seeds that I did plant. And yeah, we just simply put our coffee cup, I think. And we can make ourselves some coffee. Yeah, we just need a coffee mug, right? Yeah, regular coffee mugs. Grab some of those. I think there's 8 of them, right? 8 slots we can put this in or something like that. I think there's some other steps that's needed. Nope, you just hit OK and we're making coffee. We've now become a barista. Or I'm back to being a factory worker again. You know what? I'll take the barista part. And looky there. We have ourselves a cup of coffee. Perfect. And... very energized. Oh, and it actually lasts a little bit. I didn't realize it had like a durability on it. Interesting. I wonder if it's like Eternal Stellid. If it does last forever, that'd be great. But outside of that, well, I mean, this is filled with all kinds of stuff. There's leaf blowers, ways of blowing leaves around. We also have some paxels and things like that that kind of combine all of your tools. There's rings that can grow crops, which is another cool thing. There's a collector in here, a lot of utility blocks. There's even a way that you can generate lava from within side of actually additions. All of which I have touched on in the past, which has been pretty nice, using that heat collector right there. But yes, there's advanced hoppers, so hopping item interface. There's all kinds of cool stuff. Item interfaces that allow you to interface with you as the player, so you can send power to yourself wirelessly. There's all kinds of interesting lamps and lights and fun things like that. And there used to be a controller for them. I don't know if that's still a thing, but yes, there's a range booster. I bet the range booster can go on the phantom blocks to increase their range. That's probably what that is intended for right there. But yes, I mean, all kinds of cool stuff. The phantom blocks alone are really, really nice. There's a magnet in the mod. There's a staff that lets you teleport around. Oh man, batteries to be able to hold power and carry that around with you. I still though think that the interfaces right here are probably some of the most useful blocks. There's even a phantom placer that allows you to place blocks. And since you have the ability to do that, I've definitely seen this used in the past to build withers. Like where you're in a scenario where you only have this mod and you don't have like a wither builder, for example. This, you could set up a way to technically place in a wither automatically. Pretty darn cool. And I mean, there's even this block right here, which is called a shock absorber. And if we take a gate, for example, and we give it power, it's going to protect blocks that are nearby from like TNT explosions. So up to 5 blocks, I do believe. So we can place this all the way around. And yeah, let's set some TNT off right on top. I mean, might as well. It's going to consume some power to do this. But these blocks should not explode. Nothing's protected here. It just prevents blocks from taking damage from explosions, which is pretty nice. And then, of course, how could I forget the beloved method of generating some power? In my opinion, this is a really, really fun thing to automate. If you were early on and you really only had this mod to generate power, you would go through a canola chain where you would take the canola seeds, turn into crystallized canola, then empower the canola. And then after you empower the canola, you would then need to squeeze. I think there's a squeezer in here that would squeeze it into a liquid form, and you would end up getting yourself, I believe it's empowered oil. Yes, and then the empowered oil could then be burned, which is pretty interesting, by the way. And what a process this is. But in packs where you're really limited on power, it could be a pretty decent source of early generation. Yeah, and you can generate power from basically any of the stages of canola by utilizing the oil generator that's in here. And there's also a leaf generator, several different ways that you can generate power. Tell you what, this mod is definitely nostalgic, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Of course, I do have to get the rest of these things crafted up, and I really hope you learned something about this mod. We're gonna need about 13 more of these bad boys, so I'm in it for the long haul. And well, guys, if you did enjoy, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a huge thumbs up, and I hope that I taught you how to automate this thing successfully. There's a little bit of struggle involved, but we got through it. And well, with that, it's time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks well, that's going to go out to Redstone Gamed. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over in the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and just supporting my content in one of the best ways possible. You absolute boss. Thank you so very much. And guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching.